Clean Radio starts now.
Hey, welcome to Clean Radio. I'm Andrew, one of the co-hosts, and our other co-host, Judah, is with me. Judah, how are you this Sunday evening?
I'm great. I'm especially a lot better after you and I went on a date yesterday to see Hunger Games.
It wasn't a date, Judah.
You bought me popcorn.
I bought you popcorn, but that was like mercy popcorn.
And welcome our flagship station, News Talk KFWB 980, and also News Talk 760 KFMB San Diego. Also AM 1600 WWRL, my hometown, New York City. And it was a nice date.
It wasn't a date, Judah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Whatever.
You're sober. You should recognize that it wasn't a date.
Well, here's the thing. Yeah, that's true. But we made a date to go.
That doesn't make it a date.
Okay.
It was okay. It was a buddy guy date.
Yeah, it was bromance. And
you want it to be a date really badly. Maybe you have a sexual addiction.
What's up?
I didn't know that I was like the object of it.
You are. You're my bear. And
Wow.
You're listening to Clean Radio. That's Clean with a K. You can find us on Facebook at Clean Radio. We were talking, and we're both sober, but you happen to own also Clean Treatment Center. And what I always love saying is that you happen to be sober, but you're in treatment. And one of the cool things that we were talking about last week, and I beg people to go listen to our past shows because last week was amazing. And you were talking about a lot of things that me as a sober person I've never heard of. When you're talking about the 4 drinks being
heavy drinking,
right. And I really think that a lot of people don't know about this stuff that we always assume people do.
Well, most people that have a problem with alcohol or have had a problem with drugs that are educated about either get it from books or mostly through a 12-step meeting.
Right.
And that's really the educational part of AA, is that it will tell you a lot about alcoholism and theories on alcoholism and how alcohol affects the brain and what types of personality traits most alcoholics have.
Right.
But there's a lot more research and a lot more current research and a lot more insight into alcohol and drugs and how they work together to create problems with addiction than's readily available in those meetings. In fact, not to slight those meetings, but the fact that the doctor's opinion is so old. I mean, it hasn't been updated for years. And yet every week something new is coming out medically that has to do with addiction and how we deal with it.
Right, but I think that's also very interesting what you're saying because, the doctor's opinion, first of all, if people don't know what you're talking about, is in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, there's his doctor's opinion. I think more is in there now to show the effect that it was in 1935 and that this doctor had. I think that's as much doctory as they want to get.
Well, they also want to avoid the conflict
right.
of saying that there might potentially be interventions or ways of approaching drug addiction and alcoholism that might not be something other than abstinence based on a spiritual path of your choosing.
Wow, it's very taboo what you're saying.
It is, but that's what it is.
And and I don't disagree. I think, and one of the cool things I think is, we constantly talk about is however you get help.
By the way, why would you say it's taboo? I actually think that it's, somebody might not think favorably of it, but that's really what it is. So why not talk openly about it?
I couldn't agree with you more. I think it has
and
been.
if you don't want to talk openly about it, doesn't it mean that maybe there's something wrong with it?
No, I think. Oh wow, that's a very deep question. I think with anything, it's no different than religion. When you first get something, you hold on to it, and you don't want to hear any other voices. Right. You don't want to hear any other opinion because it's scary.
Well, I also think it's,
right.
Addiction is a serious problem.
Right.
And for the people that 12-step programs work for, which we think about 10% of the people that go actually do recover or have long terms of recovery within the program, it's self-reinforcing for that group that it works. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people that don't get the message from
right.
it or get it later along with other work. So from a therapist or from, medical detox or a residential treatment center. So, I think it's one part of the puzzle. It's not everything. And I'm really excited about it. Our guest tonight, who's done a lot of work with harm reduction, that will give us a chance to talk about a whole nother spectrum and a way of looking at addiction and addiction treatment. And in this case, addiction maintenance, which is something really taboo.
And I think there are a lot of people out there that, whether they're driving around listening to us on the internet, this is a very confusing topic.
Right.
I mean, we're in the bubble of LA where recovery is a lifestyle. And I think a lot of people out there, though, are almost scared to ask questions sometimes because whether it's the response they get or they don't know.
Well, the lifestyle part of the recovery thing is probably one of the most powerful things of it, and
Right.
especially in Los Angeles and in New York as well. But, in Los Angeles, there definitely is a strong fellowship of people that get together that are trying to be sober or are sober. And it provides people with a lot of, camaraderie and fellowship, for lack of being redundant there. But that's important. That's an important part of getting out of the isolation that comes along with becoming addicted to either alcohol or drugs or both.
And one of my favorite things we're going to talk with the guest about, we were talking a little bit about the show, before the show, and you and I both agree on we can't stand tough love. We're not in favor of this. I want to wish my father today a happy 65th birthday. Mm-hmm. And my father used to say as long as his son was alive that there was a chance.
Right.
There was a chance to get help. And I know that's how you view helping people.
Yeah, I don't think you should ever give up on anybody. I mean, and I think that things that are punitive or hurtful are not a positive way to deal with any type of addiction. Let's give out the number where people can call us, because I'd like to get callers involved in our discussion, and also people that might be out there. One of the things I think we're going to be touching on a lot about is grief and loss as well, and I think there's a lot of interesting topics that people might want to share their story with us as well.
You're listening to Klean Radio Live. That's Klean with a K. The number here is 888-539-2980. That's 888-539-2980. We have an amazing guest in tonight. Her name is Julia Negron.
Hey, Julia, welcome to Klean.
Hi. First of all, I'm the director of the LA chapter of PATH, and we're a pretty new chapter here in LA. PATH has been going on for 12 years and really started with their work on the Prop 36 campaign in the year 2000.
What's Prop 36?
Prop 36 is our landmark treatment instead of incarceration law that we're really proud of. The only problem with it, of course, now is it's an unfunded mandate.
Right.
You can go to court and get Prop 36, but there isn't any money to pay for it. So it's kind of too bad. It's one of the things we've been fighting against is
It's like the Marijuana Tax Stamp Act.
funding.
So what's like, so you're basically I'm not that
just so you
familiar
know, I
with
wasn't
this,
going to
right.
try to get all the glory for everything that PATH has done because they've done a lot of really
It was
good
a
stuff,
diversion
but we
program
just started.
set up.
Okay,
right?
yeah,
So
'cause-
instead of going to jail, people would go to treatment, and then
Prop 36 is like a diversion program. But, there are always compromises you have to make it with the law. And with Prop 36, it was that you had to plead guilty to the felony, and usually the harshest felony. And then you would be given Prop 36. And if you complete it and come back, then the case is dismissed, which is better than a sharp stick in the eye. But it's not perfect by any means.
Right.
But it's the first time we had a law like that. So we've all been pleased when Prop 36 came into being. Now that it's not funded, even though it's helped, I don't know, thousands and thousands of people actually find their way into recovery. Boy, how can we be so stupid?
Where is the
I
funding?
think a lot of people have resentment and anger towards drug addicts and drug addiction, either from family experience or from some relative that they know or some friend that they've been disappointed by or hurt by, and that comes also from a lack of understanding of what addiction's really about and what that person may have done and how it affected them and made them angry. Really is a complex series of problems and events. It doesn't really necessarily reflect that person's real true personality. And we have a lot of people sitting around with a lot of resentment and anger about substance abuse without really understanding the problem.
And I think it's because so many people translate almost any feeling into anger. Do you
Right.
know what I mean? It's like if I'm sad or worried or like upset or whatever, it's all going to come out as anger usually, and especially for parents, whose kid is using and they're scared to death every minute. Every time the phone rings, they're
And I also think when it comes to parents, and this is something Andrew and I are constantly trying to work, figure out, is they're getting advice sometimes that is just the most horrific advice you could ever give to a parent. And that's what we were talking about with tough love. If you're telling a parent that has a 16-year-old kid, kick him out, you were saying it only gets worse. You're setting that kid up for a path of criminal
or death.
Possibly.
Or death.
I mean,
there's all sorts of horrible possibilities.
Right.
But
You know, my story isn't unique, but I just know when I made that move, and trust me, with my own son, I had tried everything from we paid to have him kidnapped till we threw him in the street, you know, the whole gamut of stuff, that when we threw him in the street, he started picking up arrests. You know, so now at 34, he has 6 felony convictions and 2 prior prison terms. And, you know, does it matter if he's clean or not? Because he's not going to find a job. He's not going to find a job.
Right, you can't get one. Right.
Yeah, it makes it really, really tough. And when I think back, I kind of wish I'd never done that. You know, as much as I thought that something I did could stop his using, that didn't stop it any more than anything else. It exacerbated the problem by bringing the criminal justice system into the picture. And that's where, in my opinion, as parents and as a society, we've made a big mistake. We've turned our children over to law enforcement.
We've criminalized drug use with the with the war on drugs, and so we've criminalized addiction along with that.
Right.
And that's led to horrible stigmas. And mostly, if you call police, they're not trained to really understand what is mental illness, what is addictive behavior, you know, acting out, and what is actually criminal behavior, like, you know, really like domestic assault or something horrible like that. So you have, you know, you're asking for help from an organization and a part of the government that really isn't trained to deal with it.
Really train much in anything.
No, well, you know,
we can go into.
I mean,
you know,
we
some
would
of
be
them
a
try.
horrible place without sheriffs and police officers.
Yeah, and you
I mean,
know what? They're
honest.
going by the stupid laws that we put in place. But I mean, think about what you're saying.
Their hands are worse tied than ours in some ways. I mean,
but think about what you're saying. In order to make something a criminal offense, that means it's a morally bad thing.
Correct.
I mean, so basically, once we turned addictive illness over to law enforcement, we perpetuated the stigma and made it worse.
Do you think,
made it worse.
I think what you both are talking about are amazing points. Do you think it's too hard for people to think about these things? You know, you're both talking about, you know,
it's complicated.
And it's such a and I'm saying this as a person okay, you know, we constantly hear about people that get, you know, kill somebody drunk driving, right? But one of the few things they teach us about in the 12 steps, and you constantly hear people say in meetings, oh my God, it's hard, but they killed somebody. You know, so
they killed somebody.
Right, they killed somebody.
That's separate.
Right, that's right. So there's what I'm saying is that these things we're talking about, I think they're so hard to
Well, I think they're hard. I especially think they're hard for parents though, because of the pressure that's put on them by you know, I'm sorry, and I know it's not you. The treatment community for years and years and years and years has not been able to stop telling parents that you're enabling. Right. You're
the contracts. You know how many contracts my parents had to sign?
In other words, parents are set up to feel like failures all the way along. So the more time we're stigmatizing more, aren't we? Right. We're setting the parents up for failure, because if you went in and told them the truth, that little Farcourt here is more than likely going to relapse. So why don't we deal with what that's going to look like? You know, we don't do that.
By the way, if you just tuned in, you're listening to Klean Radio Live. That's Klean with a K. The number here is 888-539-2980. That's 888-539-2980. We're in the studio tonight with Julia Negron, who I don't want to say what you do because I seem to keep getting it wrong.
No, you got it right.
Okay, cool.
You got it right.
You work with PATH. You're the director of the Los Angeles chapter of
Los
PATH,
Angeles,
which is the Parents for Addiction Treatment and Healing. And thank you again for coming.
Yeah.
Andrew, do we have a call? Or
I want to hold off on that for a second. You know, let me control the calls.
I'm sorry. I'm really sorry about that.
Judah, you know,
sensing pathology.
He's getting very controlling lately.
Okay.
I took
him on
me.
a date.
Well, I have to tell you,
he thinks I took him on a date yesterday, and now he wants to control the calls.
Date.
We went to a movie together, and I paid. and now Judah's convinced we're dating.
Well, we went to see the Hunger Games. That's why he paid.
You know, we're not even gay. I don't understand. I mean,
I saw that. I thought that was like a kids movie or something. The Hunger Games.
It wasn't for Judah.
You know, when Andrew actually texted me that we're going to see the Hunger Games, I thought he was joking, and I was like, are you serious?
Is it vampire stuff?
No.
No.
Thank God. I mean, that's the
Right.
right. That was the one good attribute. That was the one good thing going on in this movie. Two good things: Donald Sutherland, and that it wasn't about vampires.
So I don't get the vampire thing, so you know.
Yeah, I think vampires are about sex and drugs.
You think?
Yeah, that's the imagery, right? It's transferring.
I guess.
You know.
Well, you're the Marilyn Manson fan, so that's more of that.
All right, let's not go.
Okay, so let's get into it. So,
Marilyn Manson. Okay.
So let me ask you a question. So you have a lot of parents out there, and I think today we're dealing with a lot of parents that want to be friends with their kids too, and I think.
Well, there's that.
And I mean, and we constantly talk about on the show is how marijuana has gotten how much worse than it used to be. So 40% more potent than
Depends on the strain,
right?
But obviously, the levels of THC have gone up dramatically within strains of marijuana.
That's interesting that you say that, because the first thing that comes to my mind is, does that save people money? Do they smoke less?
I don't think so.
No, they say right.
I haven't seen bongs get smaller. They seem to get bigger the older I get.
It's just the marijuana thing. And, like you, I've been in program for 27 years this November.
Right.
So I don't drink or use drugs. Okay. Right. And not because I work so hard at it, just because the social support network that is a 12-step meeting really helped me a lot, and does to this day. However, that doesn't mean that I don't know tons of people that just love weed and sit around and smoke it and play their guitar, and they're like Beavis and Butthead, and I'm like, and so
that's what you constantly say, Andrew, too, is like we were talking about a friend of ours with weight, and we do like everybody just leave the guy alone if he wants to be like that.
Yeah, let him be. It's not like he's not aware of what the problem is. Let's jump into a call. I'd like to take one of the call. We got Beverly from Agora. Beverly, you're on Klean Radio. Beverly, can you hear us?
Hi.
Hey, how are you?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Welcome to Klean Radio, Beverly.
Good. Thank you. Thank you for your help. I have a friend who has a degenerative disc problem, and she has become addicted to her pain medicine and now has started drinking. So we're trying to figure out what to do, because her pain that she takes the medicine for is definitely real, and she needs some kind of medical help to assist her with coping with the pain.
Yeah, chronic pain, Beverly, is one of the most difficult issues that we in the addiction field face, because you're right, people are in pain, and people that are in pain, there's actually a legal mandate in California that they have to be treated with pain medication. And it is important. And pain medication is actually one of the greatest things that has ever been invented, because a lot of people have a lot of different kinds of pain.
That and coffee.
Yeah, that and coffee. But the problem is that there's effects to pain medication besides the relieving of pain, and when mixed with alcohol, it tends to.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you. Could you speak up a little?
Yeah. When mixed with alcohol, the medications that are taken, which are normally opiates for pain, intensify the other effects besides the pain killing, and it's those other effects that people are generally become addicted to. The feeling of comfort, of warmth, of not having to think or feel about things. And people like that become very addicted in that way. They get very attached to the absence of having to feel.
It's also dangerous.
And it's very dangerous. Right. I mean, and most drug overdoses are from a mixture of something.
They're mixing
alcohol and pills, or but your question is really what to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's where it gets more difficult, because how long has this been going on?
I guess it's been. She had a surgery which was unsuccessful, so it's been 2 years since her surgery.
Right. And is she currently seeing a physician still?
Yeah, she does, but she's not managing her pain, and she's not appropriately. She's not being appropriately medicated, so now she's self-medicating. And don't know what to do. Because,
There's
as you said, it is dangerous.
There's several different levels which she may need intervention. One may be that she just might need some therapy, and talking with a therapist about how to manage and self-regulate her pain medication. There's a good chance that she might be able to, on her own, with the help of a therapist, moderate and manage her pain medication so it's still effective, and realize that alcohol is actually going to make the pain medicine not work for her quicker, which will cause her more of a problem. So that's one level. Another level is that she might actually be a full-blown addict now, not just addicted to needing those pills for pain, but mixing them with alcohol. She might be in a whole addictive process. At that point, she might need either an outpatient treatment center or working with a residential treatment center to detox and then restabilize her on medication, and then also educate her about how to use pain medication effectively.
Which is a great point that you bring up, because she's still going to need the pain medication.
Yeah, I mean, you can't take,
because the pain is real.
You can't take it away,
Right.
and you can change it up though, and there's different ways to deal with that too. There's also new classes of medications that aren't opiates that can be used in conjunction with opiates. Drugs like Flexeril that are muscle relaxers and stuff like that can help ease pain. Neurontin. So there's but those are things that she should be getting from someone that really understands chronic pain. And isn't just.
Where do you find these places that do that?
Well, we certainly do it at Klean.
Expert in therapy or this.
Yeah, we certainly do that at our treatment center and at our outpatient. And the physicians we work with do it on an outpatient basis. So if you hold on,
What's the name of your facility?
It's Klean Treatment Center
Klean Treatment
with a
Center.
K, Klean, center.com you can go to. And or you can call one of our intake people anytime. It's 888-601-6040. And if go check it out. But also I'll put you on hold, and the producer in the back room will give you a number to call and make sure you've got it right.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you so much for the call, Beverly.
She brought up an interesting point, and that is the difference between drug dependence and drug addiction. And because some people are just so gung-ho that everybody's an addict that has to take pain medication, that isn't necessarily the case. When she got to the point where she said, and she's drinking, I was like, oh, okay. But a lot of people are dependent on their pain medication and will need to take it, and will take it, and will be dependent on it, and that's kind of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think
and
that
don't abuse it.
I think that there is a tendency for people to think that medical problems, there's a cure for everything. And the truth of the matter, there just isn't a cure for everything.
Right. And
chronic pain, unfortunately, is one of the things that we don't have, an actual cure for most conditions. That's why it's called chronic pain. It goes on and on and on. And the drugs that we have, while they're effective at treating pain, we haven't come up with mixes of opiates that also do not have the creation of tolerance, meaning you have to take more and more over time.
Right.
And then also have the tendency to sometimes create addictive, situations with patients on an ongoing basis.
It's an interesting question, and it's all part of what we talk about, or what we've been talking about, and that is people's attitudes about addictive illness and about harm reduction and about pain management. For a lot of people, especially in 12-step, an addict is an addict is an addict. And anybody that takes almost anything more than what's exactly prescribed on a bottle, and God knows they probably don't need it anyway, is headed to hell in a handbasket.
Well, it's very interesting that you bring that up, because, I've had hernia surgery about 4.5 years ago, and for anybody out there that's had hernia surgery, it's pretty painful. And
well, you get drugs. That's what we call a freebie.
Right. And afterwards, my sponsor, literally, as I was crawling on the floor, had to stick a hydrocodone in my mouth because, and I was like, but I can't take it. He's like,
yes, you can.
Judah, you never abused pills.
Yeah.
He goes, you're doing okay. You can take this.
It isn't even that. And Andrew may help me with this a little bit. There's a reason that pain medication helps you heal.
Right.
And that your body can't take the stress from that pain.
We've got to jump out for a break. When we come back, I will answer that. We also have a call that I really want to take.
So now you want to take the call.
Yeah,
yes.
But you're listening to Klean Radio on either 980, 760, or 1600 in New York. And we'll be back in just a couple minutes with more on Klean Radio.
Are you struggling with an addiction that's ruining your life? Want to have a confidential conversation with a professional that will immediately assist you? Do you suspect a loved one is abusing drugs and would like a free drug testing kit and consultation? Klean Treatment Center is standing by right now to help those with addictions and the people who care about them. Call 888-601-6040. That's 888-601-6040. Or go to Klean Treatment Center, that's Klean with a K, cleantreatmentcenter.com.
That's Clean with a K. Now, back to Andrew and Judah.
Wow, welcome back to Clean Radio. We're having a great night tonight. We've got Julia Negron in speaking about addiction with the Judah.
Yes, with the Judah. You had an amazing time with the Judah. You took me on a date yesterday, Andrew.
Okay, let's give out the number.
And the number here is 888.
In fact, you got a free movie.
888-539-2980. That's 888-539-2980. You could also find us on Facebook at Clean Radio Facebook/Clean Radio. Like us. Like Andrew and I, and let's get back to the callers.
You can like Clean Radio and not like Judah. That's okay,
oh man,
too.
I'm gonna need
like
a meeting.
Judah, even if he's a Republican. I kind of like him.
I'm gonna need a meeting after this show, and
there's two of us.
But I think
let's jump into the call. We got a call.
But let's just quickly tell people about what we're talking about tonight, because I think it's such a huge topic, and I think it's so cool that we're actually talking about this, which is decriminalization, harm reduction, and overdose, and that people can get help.
Right.
And
no, I that's why I wanted to take a call.
Okay,
so let's take a caller on line 2. Jeff from Newport Beach, you're on Clean Radio. How are you doing tonight?
I'm good. How are you?
Thank you for waiting. What do you like to talk about?
Thank you for taking my call.
Oh, thanks.
No problem.
My question's a little offbeat. I'm wondering, you hear about Janis Joplin, Jim Morrison, Jimi Hendrix, John Bonham. I mean, the list seems to go on and on. Keith Moon, John Entwistle, 2 in one band. We romance these overdoses and these drug addictions. Bon Scott, I mean, just Kurt Cobain. These are the ones we hear about in the biographies, the movies, historically, the media. I'm wondering why, and maybe I've just missed it, but why don't we champion the rock stars that choose to live a clean life and sort of spotlight them as great examples? And I know there's not as many, or maybe it just seems that way because the media doesn't jump on those stories. I don't know his entire life, but I see a guy like Brian May, and he's a hero of mine because he's in one of the greatest bands that ever lived, but also just go YouTube him. He's a straight up, he's a genius. He seems like he's lived a relatively sober life. And so my question is, why don't we hear more about these kind of people?
I think we do. And I got to tell you my Brian May story. I know Brian.
There's the people out there, so because we're name dropping very quickly, Brian May is the guitarist for Queen. And so get back. How do you know Brian May?
Oh, well,
I love him.
He's the godfather of my best friend's son. It's complicated. But you know what? Actually, caller, I forgot his name.
Jeff.
They do get outed a lot nowadays. It used to be once in a blue moon you'd see a People magazine spread on someone that's like, like I was in hell and now I'm recovered, blah, blah, blah. But you do see more and more of them. And as for the celebrity overdoses and stuff, we get all a fluster about anything celebrities do. I mean...
Well, and it has been sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
Right, that's the romantic.
Drugs, like the comedian Bill Hicks said, if you are opposed to musicians using drugs, just throw away your whole music collection. Because pretty much most of it was created within a drug culture. And I think traditionally American culture and the use of the popular drug at the time have gone hand in hand, whether it be psychedelics in the 60s and ecstasy with trance and dance music and raves.
But we didn't know. Now, I'm a kid of the 60s, and all the things we did back then, none of us thought any of those things would harm us. We really didn't. It was just part of what we did.
Did you really not think it would harm you? I mean, I got to ask you an honest question because I hear people say that sometimes.
I think most people that use drugs don't think it will harm them.
Really?
Yeah.
Is that because they don't?
Look at smokers.
Well, I believe it's going to harm me. But here's the thing.
Not really.
Not enough.
Not
yeah.
really. Right. But I think he asked also a great question because it's one of the reasons.
No, I really didn't think so. And even at the end of my using, I was a heroin addict.
Right.
And I was shooting dope.
And you didn't think that
and
would have
I
an
didn't think
effect.
that would. I didn't really see why that was an issue. The issue became money.
Right.
To have, like if I could just
I mean,
maybe if I was Keith
I had
Richards,
a
it would work
girlfriend-
out.
I had a girlfriend that
Really?
would smoke pot all the time,
Yeah.
and she would take LSD, and then she got bronchitis.
And she stopped,
I told her to take an antibiotic, and it was Bactrim. I gave her an antibiotic, and she wouldn't take it. She's like, "I'm not putting that drug in my body," and I'm like, "Are you kidding
And now
me?"
she shops at Whole Foods.
right.
But
which is
you know
always
what?
my-
And
But
lives
that's
in
sort of-
and
but
lives
that's-
in L.A.
Yeah,
Come
but
on.
that's the
And
denial
runs Runyon
level. But that's
Canyon.
the denial level of people that are using drugs.
But no, we
you
really
know?
didn't. And I can remember, like, when my oldest son was born, we had a pediatrician in Beverly Hills, the top pediatrician. Everybody went to this
I know who it
pediatrician.
is, too.
No, this
Yeah.
guy's dead. I don't
Oh.
think you know him. He was Cher's pediatrician. He was ours, and Dr. John's kids went there. Everybody went there,
Who's Dr.
and he wore a Nick shirt and platform shoes and a gold Coke spoon around his neck.
Wow.
And
And
that
he had a
kind of-
long pinky nail.
Right, exactly. And he was the big Beverly Hills pediatrician. But that's what we thought in those days, that it wasn't a big deal. And even when you get into heavier drugs, we have the money. We're not street junkies,
Right.
I think it is a great question that we asked, and it's one of the reasons Andrew and I wanted to start this show was because we wanted to show people that there, and have guests that there's
That are cool, that
right,
are either sober
that there
or have always
is
been
life
sober.
after, because the press does glamorize it. We go to a 12-step meeting. There's a 12-step meeting in a bar in L.A., right, where if you
Yeah.
look at the bar, if you look at the walls, it's 4 dead rock stars, right? And usually I think all of them died in a bathtub.
Right.
And
In the
That's,
same
that's my
bathtub.
thing. If you're
Right.
going to do drugs of any kind,
don't go to the bathroom.
no, just don't take a bath.
Yeah, or sit
Yeah.
in the toilet now. And I think it's very important because one of my favorite shows was Behind the Music, and
Oh, remember.
and you know what I loved about the VH1 in the early 2000s? It was like the Recovering Alcoholics Network.
Yeah.
Okay, because they had Where Are They Now? That show.
Right.
And I used to love it because it was like all the survivor bands, like the bands that like finally they got sober.
Right.
But I always noticed that they never told what happened after. Because that's where people start as a culture. Oh, that's great. CeCe DeVille does good now. Let me turn off the TV. And
Right, and I think there is an element in our culture with youth that they're feeling angry, depressed, alienated.
We've always felt
right,
that, though. That's part of
it's
youth.
part of growing up.
Right.
It's part of having to face responsibility and form an identity and become an individual. And the rebellion against that is largely expressed through music, and rebellion, of course, also brings with it drugs. I also think that to think that drug use in our culture or any culture, is ever going to not exist is a ridiculous concept. I mean,
Right.
people
Thank
have been
you.
right. People have been using drugs since the beginning of time. People will always use drugs. The question is, how do people use drugs?
Well, that's why we take a more pragmatic view now, a lot of us. And even people in recovery that don't use drugs and don't like drugs. And I lost both my mother and my sister to overdose, and lots of friends. What we're doing now isn't working.
Right.
We really need to get rid of that idea, expect a miracle, drug-free America and all that. It's like we know more now. And when you know more, you have to do more. And things like syringe exchanges and things like that 20 years ago in a meeting, people would have ripped their hair out by the roots at the very thought of a syringe exchange, because there's that soft bias of low expectations,
Right.
that you're going to be enabling a drug addict. But things like that now have been proven.
Well,
to be saving
harm
lives.
reduction is, largely, which is what you're talking about, safe needles, because there's other things that happen besides just using drugs. People pick up HIV. People,
Hep C.
Yeah, people can, engage in violent behavior, the criminal behavior to get needles, steal them from
Right.
drugstores. There's all this secondary stuff that people, then further labeling and criminalize people. The shooting galleries in Vancouver where they actually have full
Right.
It freaked me out, by the way.
Right.
yeah.
Shooting galleries
Dr.
where-
Gabor Mate does a lot of really good work up there. I'm not totally
Yeah.
on board with his trauma
I mean,
theories, but
it-
he's
you know,
doing good.
I
Yeah.
mean, but just for people that don't know, they actually have galleries where you go in.
Safe
and
injection
Yeah,
sites.
Safe injection sites
With
where you
nurses,
bring
right?
your own drugs in, you
Yeah.
go in, and they give you a clean needle, and you sit there and you shoot up there. And if you overdose, they give you Narcan, which is a drug that brings you back instantly from an overdose.
Right.
And then they encourage you, if you hit a bottom while you're there, to think about either moderating your use or actually go into
Resources,
some sort of
yes.
sobriety and social
That's so
resources.
important.
But you know what's crazy
Yeah.
about it? How beautiful a street it was on.
Right.
And I remember I'm driving down this street with people going, "Oh, that's the shooting up clinic," and I'm like, "At
Yeah.
least put it on a bad street."
But it's important to know why that happened. And why that happened is that a very potent batch of heroin came into Vancouver, and it got distributed, and there was a huge number of overdoses in a very short period of time.
Right.
And the government realized that they needed to do something about it, that these people that were addicted to shooting heroin didn't deserve to die, that there must be a way to somehow bring them in and co-opt
That's
them.
the thing. Do they deserve to die? I think
Right.
that's what I was telling Judah. That's what I feel is that the undercurrent. That's
Right.
the undercurrent. Like, we can talk about compassion, human rights, pragmatic views of drug policies, but as long as people hold that secret belief
The drug addicts really deserve to
drug
die.
addicts
They did
really
it to
deserve to
themselves.
die.
and they
Right.
should
Well, I'm going
just
to give
die.
you. Well, first of all, you're listening. If you just tuned in, you're listening to Clean Radio Live. That's Clean Radio Live. That's Clean with a K. The number is 888-539-2980. That's 888-539-2980. We're in the studio tonight with Julia Negron, director of Los Angeles chapter of PATH. That's Parents for
PATH.
Addiction, Treatment, and Healing.
We still got Jeff on the line.
Yeah, we
Hey,
do.
Jeff, if
Jeff.
we answered your question, we got kind of
Oh,
sidetracked.
sorry, Jeff.
You guys are interesting. It's fun to listen to. You make a good point, Julia, when you say we know more now. We asked the question earlier, did you really know?
We didn't. I wrote in an article I wrote for Overdose Day about Jim Morrison, because I was married to one of the Doors. I was married to John Densmore. And I just remember Jim's, like, the last birthday I saw him, we went looking for a present for Jim, and we found this huge Courvoisier bottle on wheels. And he was a real drunk, like walking on ledges of hotels,
Right.
drunk. But, I didn't know. Who knew, about AA or alcoholism or anything else, and we wheeled in this big Courvoisier bottle. We were over at the Seven Seas or some strip club. I don't know where. Belly Dancing Club.
The ones that all look the same in
Seven
LA.
Veil, I
know,
believe it is. Not that I
Is
would
it
know.
the Seventh Veil? Seventh Veil.
No, they're all the same. Not
I
that
swear
I know.
it was there then, and I mean, I think about it now, like, oh my God, how could we do that? He was obviously an alcoholic, but we didn't really know.
Right.
We just thought, oh, Jim, he's got a drinking problem. He's going to kill himself
Or it was
falling
part
off a
of
ledge.
youth, right? And I think we still see that in youth culture today, where people binge drink in college
Right.
or binge drink
And
in
it's a
high
rite
school.
of passage.
Yeah, it's considered
Right.
almost like a rite of passage.
And I think it's also, because I struggle with the same question that the caller is asking. But I realized it's nobody's job we're not evangelicals when we get sober. And what I mean by
Some
that is
people are.
some people are, but
Right.
it's nobody's job. I would love it sometimes if they did a sober fest, right, where they got all the sober bands together and they played this thing for teenagers out there to help them. But it's so scary because you don't want to be the face. Nobody wants to stand up, and this what stinks about when somebody dies is then they become the face because they became the face of that guy that OD'd. But
yeah, but I really don't think that Kurt Cobain. He didn't die of drug overdose.
No, he
died,
had mental
he died,
illness.
He died from
He-
depression,
Right,
and he
Yeah.
had physical illness, and he also had a lot of relationship
But that's
problems.
you. But that's you as an objective person is able to look at that.
You know,
Most people.
And wasn't he in rehab?
Well, he
left
had
rehab?
actually he
You
jumped
actually-
out of Matrix and ran
Right,
away. and
right.
then
I
Right.
remember.
he ran
Remember
up to-
Betty in
yeah.
Dallas. But the thing about that is that's also a real dangerous situation that people don't realize when people are just coming out of rehab or
Right.
leave rehab. That they're at that's the rawest, riskiest
Right.
place
Well, they're
to be in
finally
the world.
feeling something after a long
Right.
period of time.
Well, they're also clean and subject to overdosing like that. You
right.
know.
Yeah, we
But
see a
it's-
lot of that.
And it's not their job. If they choose to walk out there and talk to children and talk to teenagers
Yeah.
and say you don't need to do this to enjoy, that's their choice. But I used to want them to do that too. But you don't.
To me, there's a couple of major issues. One is that when people are really addicted to the point where they're using heroin daily or they're very addicted to cocaine, most of them are on some level suicidal. They're doing an action where they're in so much pain and they're suffering so much that they know on some level they're semi-suicidal. And there's a lot of underlying behavioral health issues, mental health issues that need to be addressed along with just the addiction. And that just doesn't happen most places. Most places just think that it's the same old, let's apply what works for late-stage alcoholics to treating addiction and recognizing the more complex, psychodynamic and psychological issues that underlie the problems. Like Kurt, for example, had Cobain had a chronic pain problem with his stomach. He had huge emotional issues related to his marriage. And he ended up shooting himself in the head.
Yeah.
He didn't die from a heroin overdose.
Right.
Right? I mean, he was self-managing his pain with the use of heroin.
And as a perfect example, one of my favorite lead singers of all time killed himself when he was decades sober, which was, the Boston lead singer. And
who is that? I'm like out of it.
I want to say Tom
Boston.
Schultz, but it could be the other one that did it. But it was, you could, and I think that's something we wanted to talk about too on the show when we started. It was that there are people that are sober a long time.
There's so much to talk
that
about.
that are struggling,
two parts.
right? That are so struggling with life, and they're scared to say out loud in a
Yeah.
12-step meeting, "I'm depressed."
Or that they need
You know
something
what? I hate
else.
to do this,
Yeah.
but I got to cut Jeff off. Jeff, we got to let you go because I got to make room on the board here for the other calls. But thank you so much for
Yeah.
calling.
for having me, you guys.
And great question.
Thank you, Jeff. Nice meeting you.
Why don't you give out the number again there, Judy?
The number is 888-539-2980. That's 888-539-2980. If you just tuned in, you're listening to Klean Radio Live. That's Klean with a K. We're in the studio tonight with Julia Negron, director of PATH. And just an
all-around groovy chick.
That was about to say
Yeah.
that. I was just about to
Right,
say
you
that.
got
Listen, I always I always feel like I have to tell the truth about my rehab.
Yeah.
And my rehab in 1985 was that I had 190 days of hospitalization at 100%. And I went to the hospital.
Yep.
And I went home and I relapsed. And I could go back to Cedars, good hospital, for another 45 days at 100%, completely covered by my insurance.
Cedars has closed.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
I
they
know.
closed their
But I
psychiatric
mean,
ward.
the difference of being able to do that and having your medical issues addressed, and there was a psychiatrist, and it was a hospital.
Yeah.
And it breaks my heart a little bit that we don't have that.
Well, we've moved away from hospitals
Right.
largely, and there's a couple economic reasons for that have been driving that. One is that the profit centers of hospitals, which are normally cardiology being the biggest one,
Right.
And also psychiatry, believe it or not, are in some ways are profit centers for hospitals, and they move to freestanding clinics. So, when you go get your heart surgery, sometimes you don't go to the hospital anymore. You go to the clinic that's right across the road from the hospital
Right.
by the cardiologist,
Right.
so they can keep the money for the surgical procedure.
And by the same token, the rehab moved into freestanding residential rehabs that really aren't a medical model, really can't offer a really true integrated program.
Well, one of the things
Well,
I've spoken
that bothers me.
Well, because one of the things I love about Andrew, and it's other than that he takes me to the movies, is and we were discussing this.
I've taken you to one movie.
Yes, and we were discussing this. No, Mission Impossible, and we
Okay,
were
two
discussing.
movies.
And
two.
3 is a charm, and
Wow, that's not
we
gonna
were-
happen.
Yeah, well, we were discussing. I'm never going to the movies with you again. And one of the things I always
You just
say
ruined
is,
it.
Andrew happens to be sober. But that's not what got him to start clean treatment. And I
Yeah.
think a huge problem in the treatment field is everybody's like, "Oh, I'm sober 2 months. Let me build a rehab."
Yeah.
And
a lot of that.
And no offense to them, I know they're trying to do well, but they don't understand different models.
Well, I also have, I have a
Right.
business background
Right,
as
but
well.
that's right.
In
But
healthcare.
Right.
Careful
So-
with that, because I wanted today to also talk about the prison industrial complex. But
Right.
what I'm seeing is a lot of lately is I feel like the treatment industrial complex. There is
Why
so
don't you
many.
explain what that is? Because
Which one?
what treatment industrial complex?
I
The
see
idea that
everybody.
The
Andrew knows.
corporations are making
Oh,
a lot
yeah.
of money off of
Yes.
treatment, and it's becoming
So
a business, a big business.
Yeah.
It is a business. It's not your program. It's a business,
Right.
and everybody that enters the door is by their criteria, which is that they have the money.
It's ching ching.
Is an
Well,
inpatient
let me tell you a couple things.
admission. Not at your center.
Our treatment center, we give 10% of our beds away for free.
Yeah, that's
so
great.
that right there is 10% of our
I'd say
bottom
we give
line.
30% away
We might
because
give-
Andrew's like really, and I'm not just saying that.
I might
but
give a
we're-
couple more away than I
yeah.
should.
I always say
I
to
get a
people,
lot of
please
crap
don't
for
call.
it.
I always think
So-
because it's hard. It's hard to say
well,
no.
it's I have a board of directors
Yeah.
still, and
Right.
it's hard to convince people that.
And if you go broke, you can't do anything.
Right.
So,
that's the other
yeah,
thing.
Right.
The other thing is that Klean wasn't really started to make money.
Mm-hmm.
There's other business endeavors that I do besides that I can make more money in. I've done a lot of movie financing and other
Porn.
things like that. Porn.
I'm joking. It was a
Anyway,
joke.
That's the third movie
so,
you're going to, right?
I got into treating mental illness
Yeah.
first, and that's always been an interest of mine. And then, the recovery obviously became important to me as well. And that's what Klean is. It's the first center that we created. It's myself and two doctors that started it, a psychiatrist and an internist. And it was really created to create a place that's in the free market that we get to create our own treatment milieu or way of treating people.
Well, I'm really happy to hear that because it's all, as a retired substance abuse counselor, and I still keep up my education and my certification, it kind of breaks my heart when I'm seeing TV ad lately after TV ad, and I open the magazine and there's boot camp for your kid, and did you have an extra martini at dinner? Well, then check into Passages or something, and it just feels dirt. It makes me feel slimy.
It does.
At times.
And I think
And
that
now
goes back to the
Cliffside-
last caller.
Cliffside's even guaranteeing people. I thought, oh my God.
But I think that goes back to the last caller.
Well,
what
a
was-
cure for addiction. It's just
right.
that's
Well, you cure
Passages.
for
Yeah.
addiction, or
But now others are following, and they're saying we guarantee.
Right.
Yeah, well, there's a
What
lot
they
of them. They're all
guarantee
going
you.
after the really high end client that will
Right.
pay $50,000 to $60,000 to $70,000 or more per month for
Mm-hmm.
treatment. And there's a lot of people out there, especially
There's a
in this
lot
area,
of
that
them.
will pay that.
And I look at it as terrorism in a sense, and I say that with all sincerity because when I was struggling, my parents, kept on putting me into different rehabs because people were, they were saying, the drug counselors were saying, if you don't put your kid, and do
die.
this, he'll die. So
Right.
give us your money for 9 months.
Well, the funny
And-
thing is that really the only difference between a lot of the programs that charge $100,000 a month and a program like Klean that takes insurance,
nicer
and we
quilts.
actually have
No,
our
we're
lowest
beautiful.
cost bed is $10,000 a month, which may still sound like a lot to people. And then we have free scholarship beds on top of that.
Right.
But the real difference is amenities.
Right.
And
Yeah. And you know what?
We're not
And you
promising
know
you-
what, though? That's okay because, I can spend the night at the Motel 6 or I can
Right.
spend the night at the Four Seasons. A lot of very wealthy people are used to amenities and they have that kind of money.
and they wouldn't go to treatment if they didn't have.
And they wouldn't, So that was the last place I worked was in a Malibu treatment that was about $50,000 a month, and that's what that's just the honest truth. Like, it's probably the same thing you're going to get at, well, maybe not Cry Help, but somewhere, else, but we have a really nice down quilt and we have a great chef and blah blah blah,
Right.
and and because you have money, you have more availability to these doctors and yoga and all this other stuff. So there's something to be said for it, but that's the private sector.
Yeah.
I'm more interested in what's going to happen in the public sector because, as I said before, we've turned over our addictive illness treatment to law enforcement.
Well, I think that it's going to have to be led from the private sector, and that's why I stayed for profit.
Really?
Because I thought that going nonprofit and then getting into that whole issue of having to raise money and then doesn't give me the ability to spend money the way I want to. I'd
Right.
have to report to a board. I couldn't create the kind of treatment that I wanted to without others' approval that didn't really have the same vision that I had in starting Klean.
But you're not gouging people.
No, in fact,
Right.
but I'm also opening beds in very rural areas. We
Uh-huh.
just bought another hospital up in Washington State.
Oh, wow.
We will be opening in about 6 weeks or so, Long Beach, Washington, right across the border from Oregon. In the Columbia River, and we're able to offer treatment up there for like $10,000.
You know
a
what?
bed.
I'm really glad to know that.
Yeah.
I still get a lot of people asking me about this place or that place, and you are obviously not part of the treatment industrial complex,
Right.
and I'm just really happy to have that information. But I bet a lot of people don't know that.
No, it's not. It's not. It's also
I
that
bet a
we're.
lot don't.
But I think the interesting thing too is that we're willing to say we don't know.
Yeah.
And I think so many times you meet people. One of my favorite things about Dr. Coe, who's the psychiatrist at Klean, is when you say to him, "Why does this medicine work?" He'll be like, "I don't know."
He's like, we really don't know.
No, but it
And
works.
He's honest about it.
And he's honest about
Yeah.
it. And I think, what we were talking about before is everybody wants to give you this, it's like one of my favorite speakers in AA used to say, about how it works, right? Or, keep coming back, right? He would say, because everybody when you're new in 12 steps says, keep coming back. He goes to somebody one time, what does that mean?
We really got to take a couple more calls.
Okay,
We got
sorry.
let's take Lenora from Newark, New Jersey. Welcome to Klean Radio.
Welcome, Lenora.
Oh, good evening, panel. Excuse me. I just wanted to say I wasn't going to turn my radio on tonight, and I turned my radio on, and I heard something, and it really clicked for me because I've been in recovery for 17 years.
Oh, wow.
But I have chronic pain. I have back problems, so now I'm in pain management. And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking that I'm relapsing.
You're not.
You're not.
Okay.
And we're all sober in here.
I'm certified, and I say
Yeah.
no. What do you say, Doc?
Definitely not.
Definitely not. And I know it's hard.
Yes.
You shouldn't feel
Yeah.
guilty for taking medicine
Yeah.
that's prescribed to you by a doctor for a problem that
Right.
you really have, and especially when it helps.
Yeah.
That's why the doctor's giving you that medication.
Yeah.
Now, there are doctors that abuse that privilege, and they get arrested and put in jail and other things. But if you're really taking medicine that's prescribed to you for something that you know is a problem, and you're taking it within the way it's prescribed to you at the right dosages and at the right time, you should feel confident that that's the right thing to do. If you feel that you're becoming incapacitated by that medication, or that medication is affecting you in a way that you're not able to live your life because it's making you not be able to think or move, or it's affecting you more than the pain would, then you need to consider that and talk to your doctor about that immediately.
No, I don't have that problem because I take it the way I'm supposed to take it, and I go every month for my checkups. But you said something that clicked for me when you said about the pain, the drug addiction and drug dependency, and I had never heard it like that before. So that's really eased my mind when I heard that.
Yeah, and I know we all know it's hard, Lenore. But I always say when you're spiritually okay and you take medicine, it's okay. It's when you're not centered and you decide to go on something. And I shouldn't have said that because we're running out of time, but I think you know what I'm talking about. Lenore, you're probably going to meetings. You're okay. It's okay to do what you have to do. And listen, please, everybody out there, listen to your doctor.
Yeah.
Thank you for taking my call.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Lenora.
Okay.
Okay, well, we got about 2 minutes left in the show. We're not going to get to a couple calls, unfortunately, but always leaving
You know
somebody
what?
out.
Wanted
You know
to
what?
talk about prison.
You know what? To be continued.
I know we're going to have
With
Julia back.
You know what? I think we definitely are. Maybe we'll do a double dose of her and Carrie White at the same time.
Right.
That'll be actually.
We'll have them argue about smoking.
Oh my God.
Well, we can, but the treatment and incarceration stuff is going to come up. And this year we have a bill that Senator Leno has put before the California legislature to reduce simple drug possession to a misdemeanor, and that's really important. If that's the only thing I get in here tonight, we can stop felonizing.
Where can people get more information about that?
Almost anywhere. If you want to just Google my name and contact me on Facebook or something. I'm one of those people.
So if people go to cleanradio.com, our website, Julia's name will be there. We'll put a link up there as well.
Right. And my
this
Twitter
is really important and cool what you're doing.
My Twitter is worth saving, and we also have a bill up for a Good Samaritan 911 bill that passed last year, and Schwarzenegger wouldn't sign it, but it's important.
So if you're a California resident, read about it and vote.
Yeah, that's the most important thing is read about this
pressure
stuff.
your legislator.
Yeah, listen, Lord knows they work at they make enough money that they should be working our
Listen,
legislators.
I'm sitting here. Narcan saved my life twice, and we didn't even know that was like a bazillion years ago. And who knew, that we'd be fighting 30 years later to try and get that out.
Thank you so much,
thank you,
Julia. Judah, maybe I'll take you to a movie one more time.
Okay,
we'll
the
think about
discussion.
it.
I don't want to hear about it.
Everybody's going to hear about it. It's going to be Hunger Games 2. No, we're actually going to see Twilight. The
Oh,
discussion
God, no.
continues at cleanradio.com.
Take him to the Lorax.
Yeah, right?
Are you struggling with an addiction that's ruining your life? Want to have a confidential conversation with a professional that will immediately assist you? Do you suspect a loved one is abusing drugs and would like a free drug testing kit and consultation? Klean Treatment Center is standing by right now to help those with addictions and the people who care about them. Call 888-601-6040. That's 888-601-6040. Or go to Klean Treatment Center, that's Klean with a K, cleantreatmentcenter.com.